Before I give a homily or reflection, I'd like to share with you the letter of Metropolitan Deacon, our primate in the Orthodox Church in America, on the occasion of the Sanctity of Life Sunday, which is today, the Sunday before the annual anniversary of the Roe v. Wade decision, to give a little context to the words I'm going to talk about. To the hierarchs, clergy, monastics, and faithful of the Orthodox Church in America, dearly beloved in the Lord, today has been designated by the Orthodox Church in America as Sanctity of Life Sunday, a day on which we reaffirm our faithfulness to the eternal value of human life and recommit ourselves to the defense of the lives of the unborn, the infirm, the terminally ill, and the condemned. Our proclamation of life is offered in the context of a world in dismay at the terrorist attacks that recently shook the world, the latest in a series of seemingly endless tragedies throughout the world that unnecessarily claim many innocent lives. Following this latest series of tragedies, Christians, Muslims, Jews, and non-believers have engaged in discussion and debate about a range of issues, from human dignity to the responsibilities of political cartoonists, from freedom of expression to humanity's capacity for tolerance. Unfortunately, much of this debate is framed in an atmosphere of ideological violence, whether this be a war on infidels or a war on terrorism. In such divisive engagements, there are rarely any victors, but only more victims. As Orthodox Christians who hold dear the revealed truth that the life of all mankind is sacred, we might reflect along with St. Nikolai of Zicha on the paschal victory of Christ over death and corruption. St. Nikolai wrote, "Christ's victory is the only victory in which all humanity can rejoice, from the first created to the last. Every other victory on earth has divided and still divides men from one another. When an earthly king gains the victory over another earthly king, one of them rejoices, the other laments. When a man is victorious over his neighbor, there is singing under one roof and weeping under the other. There is no joyful victory on earth that is not poisoned by malice. The ordinary earthly victor rejoices both in his laughter and in the tears of his conquered enemy. He does not even notice how evil cuts through joy." Metropolitan Deacon continues, "Our world is so full of these joyless and dark victories that we might despair of being able to put forward the hope and light of the gospel message. We would do well to heed the words of St. Nikolai and keep our hearts and minds focused on our Lord, God, and Savior, Jesus Christ, in whom alone can solace, hope, and joy be found in any meaningful and lasting way. Indeed, Christ did not say, 'I offer one of many complementary paths.' He said, 'I am the way.' Christ did not say, 'I hold to the correct philosophical principles.' He said, 'I am the truth.' Christ did not say, 'I subscribe to the only viable political agenda.' He said, 'I am the life.' It is only possible to attain to this way, this truth, and this life through Jesus Christ and through the light that He bestows to those who strive to allow even a small beam of that light to enter their hearts and illumine their path. As St. Nikolai writes, Christ's victory alone is like a sun that sheds bright rays on all that are beneath it. Christ's victory alone fills all the souls of men with invincible joy. It alone is without malice or evil. Let us therefore make every effort to offer this victory of light and life to those who are surrounded by darkness and death. Let us be bold in adding our Orthodox voices in support of the value of every human person, born or unborn. Let us offer consolation to the mothers who have undergone abortions, and offer our prayers to them and to all who have been affected by this tragedy. Let us affirm our Orthodox understanding of the human person as created in the image and likeness of God, and yet in need of healing in Christ. Let us together proclaim the great victory of Christ, as St. Nikolai writes. A mysterious victory, you will say. It is, but at the same time revealed to the whole human race, the living and the dead. A generous victory, you will say. It is, and more than generous. Is not a mother more generous than when she, not once or twice, saves her child from snakes, but in order to save them for all time, goes bravely into the snake's very nest and burns them out? A healing victory, you will say. It is, healing and saving forever and ever. This gentle victory saves men from every evil and makes them sinless and immortal. Immortality without sinlessness would mean only the extending of evil's reign, and of that of malice and wickedness. But immortality with sinlessness gives birth to unconfined joy and makes men the brethren of God's resplendent angels. With love in the Lord, Tikhon, Archbishop of Washington, Metropolitan of all America and Canada. So brothers and sisters, I think this is very beautiful. Of course I'm going to say that, he's my boss, but on the topic of violence in the world, yes. But there are many other areas in which we struggle with these issues of the sanctity of human life. And this last week I was able to participate in some very lengthy and deep reflections on this subject from many different angles. And I just want to share with you a couple different stories and situations that we talked about that are really challenging and show the complexity of the issue. So I'm going to attempt to complexify for you instead of simplify, which I try to do the opposite. But sometimes it's important to realize that we're dealing with very bizarre options. And at the heart of this has to do with the fact that we live now in a time, especially since the last 50 years or so, where human technology has now created a whole new game when it comes to the issues of life and death. Before, life and death was for the most part up to forces far beyond our control and often our understanding. We could not do much to improve or increase or deny the birth of children. We had to work with the biology that was in front of us. We also could not do very much to save human lives the way we can today, or prolong them or extend them past the point where the body would naturally expire. And both the beginning of life and the end of life have now created these really complicated gray areas for us to deal with. So I want to just talk about a couple of them, because you may find that you are going to deal with them at some point in your life. The first I'll start with the end first, the end of life, and then work back into the end. Well, end-of-life issues are always extremely difficult because they often put us in a position of making almost impossible decisions. Decisions we don't want to make even if they are possible. And sometimes they're really quite tragic, and sometimes they're tragic, but they're also a relief because we know somebody's suffering has come to the end. Well, one priest told us a story which was really a difficult situation. He had in his parish a very faithful family, and they had a 17-year-old daughter who was involved in a car accident and was lifted to the hospital and so forth, but pronounced brain dead. But before she had been pronounced brain dead, she had already been intubated and put on a ventilator. So she was biologically alive, but her brain had been damaged beyond the likelihood of any repair. And so they called the priest and they asked the priest, and by the time the priest had gotten there, because they lived far from their parish, and he actually had to drive 3 hours because he lived way up in a distant land, I'll say, without naming names. By that point, the family had already talked with the medical providers and had made this decision, well, we're going to donate the organs. Now, we don't have a problem with organ donation for the most part as Orthodox Christians. We don't have a magical religious idea of the body, like somehow if you donate your organ, you're not going to have one in the life to come, or something like ridiculous like that. But the problem was that then when the priest got there, the hospital wanted to take the young woman while she was still on the machine, and this is for practical reasons, to a prepared, sterile operating operating room. So, and then remove the life support, and then as soon as biological life had ended, immediately begin the surgical removal of organs. That's the most effective way to do it. Well, what ended up happening then was the family was not able to be there with their daughter as she herself passed. They had to say goodbye to her while she was still biologically alive. Now imagine psychologically what that does to you. What kind of closure can you possibly have? In our Orthodox tradition, we are all about closure, quite literally, when it comes to the death of our loved ones. We like to be there with them as they die. We have prayers for them as they are dying, at the moment of death, and shortly thereafter. We have all these prayers. We like to be with them, we like to read the Psalter as they're expiring. It's an incredible experience. And if you have that opportunity, I recommend it. And of course, throughout the centuries, you were lucky if you had that blessing, because very often, if a person was not with their family when they fell ill or died, I mean, they might die completely alone in the field, in an accident, in the forest, or what have you. I'm always moved by the story of St. Innocent of Alaska, who was a married priest traveling across Siberia to begin mission work. And in that day, it took like a 2-month journey or something crazy like that, across by land. And found out later by letter that while he was along the way, his family had died, they'd been buried, his wife and his child had died. And so, I mean, I don't even know how you cope with that. And so he eventually became a monastic, became a bishop, and was the great missionary to our land in Alaska. The family has not coped well with the loss of their 17-year-old daughter, not surprisingly, because they didn't get to go through that whole process. So the reason I share with you these kind of stories is to be aware of what you may face someday, whether you like to or not. And be ready and realize that you do have some rights. The family could have been a little bit more allowed to be with their daughter for a little bit longer. They did spend several hours with her and decide finally. But don't let anyone push you or rush you. You have the rights. And make sure that you have that opportunity to do what you need to do. So that's one thing. That's an end-of-a-life issue that is just caused by the fact that we have these technologies today. That normally they wouldn't have any ability to. She would have died at the scene of the accident. Now the other end of the spectrum is the beginning of life. And we have many challenges. And one of the challenges today that's an unexpected challenge, I guess, is the question of in vitro fertilization. Some of you may have had in vitro fertilization in the process of having your children. I don't know. No one has told me. If you have, I hope that you will and talk to me about it someday. And in vitro fertilization is one of those challenging situations. What it means, in vitro means in the glass, literally, right? They take an egg and the sperm from the parents, and they fertilize them exterior to the mother, and then implant them once fertilized. Now when they do this, the typical practice is they fertilize a whole number of eggs so that they can have the highest chance of success. Now what happens then, what if you have success, but you still have leftover fertilized eggs? Hopefully you go back and say, okay, I'm ready for, after a year or so, you're ready to have another child, and you want to have more, you come back and you use them all up. That's the idea. But in many cases, people don't. For whatever reason, they decide they're done, or they can't have any more. Or maybe one of the parents dies, who knows? There's all kinds of bizarre situations that develop. And now you have fertilized eggs, somewhere frozen, that are in limbo. And from an ethical point of view, the case is made that, well, this is human life. And it could very well be, we could call it a human person. Theologians and ethicists debate over where's the definition, where's the boundary? Does it have to be in the mother to be really given the full rights, or is it just tissue? That's a very difficult and a dangerous kind of decision to even try to make. But it gets complicated. Realize this, that even under natural circumstances, a husband and a wife trying to conceive a child, according to conservative estimates, 70% of fertilized eggs will be naturally lost through what's called wastage, or occult miscarriage, meaning hidden. You don't even know what happened. You were briefly, fertile and pregnant for a moment, but then you had your monthly thing anyway, and nothing happened. So you didn't even know. So in the natural world, the loss of fertilized embryos is happening all the time. Now some people wonder, gosh, that's a horrible thing. Should we be worried about that and concerned about that? I don't know. I mean, it's just part of the way the natural world works. And Other people said, well, how could there be a God if God allows 60 to 70% of human beings never to even make it to term? Not to mention all the ones that were terminated consciously. I don't think that's a problem either. I don't blame God for that. In fact, it just makes me realize what a miracle my life is. What a miracle it is to be alive in this universe at all. If you study the science of it, it's extraordinarily amazing that we have life on planet Earth. So I don't blame God for that. I thank God. I thank God. And I'm humbled. Like Job, humbled by God in the world. So is it then unethical to have this IVF wastage when your body normally creates the wastage? This is the problem. You see how difficult these questions are? And you expect our bishops and our priests to come up and tell you black and white, right from wrong. Sorry. Life doesn't always work that way. Life isn't always clear-cut. Life is very complicated, and our science continues to show us things that we don't even realize. We'll totally change the game later. And people want that security and sense of moral clarity. So what we say is, okay, err on the side of caution, always. Whenever possible, you err on the side of caution. Is it better not to do in vitro fertilization in the first place? Maybe. Could be. But then again, are we to deny people the right to have children and say, well, they can adopt? You know how hard it is to adopt in this day and age? Extraordinarily difficult. And how complicated that is? There's a whole ball of wax there we could talk about. And I've worked with orphanages. So today I'm giving you stuff to think about. I'm giving you meat to chew on instead of milk. And I'm not going to give you an answer. Because I don't know if I'm qualified yet. I'm studying for a doctorate, and I don't know if I'm qualified to tell you this. Because it's so complicated. But I think what we all decided as a cohort of students was, yeah, we really need our bishops to take the class we took and to sit down together and really start discussing this on the level of complexity that it actually exists. Because we need some good answers, we need some good guidance, and we need help. Because these are the issues we will be faced with, and if we are not ourselves, our children are going to be faced with them. And the technology is rapidly increasing such that there are issues we haven't even dealt with yet, and are coming. So brothers and sisters, we celebrate the sanctity of life. Really embrace that idea on the deepest levels, not just in terms of moral platitudes, but in terms of the great and incredible mystery that life itself presents us, the incredible and great moral conundrums that life presents us, that life and death present us, and realize this is what this is all about. What we're doing here as a church is celebrating Christ's victory over death and confusion and moral conundrums for all eternity. And unfortunately, while we're in this life, it is the promise of the life to come that we have to accept. It is not going to be resolved today, to here, this month, this year, or this universe, this life. It will only be resolved 100% to our satisfaction in the age of the life to come. So let us be patient, let us be cautious, let us be in awe of the great mystery of life. Let us respect it, let us uphold it, and let us tread wisely. Christ is among us.